She walks where the bones still lie, not because she's lost, but because she remembers. There, beneath the acacia tree, her sister once fell. Years have passed, the seasons have changed, but something in her still aches. She stands, she waits, she touches the ground with her trunk, as if listening for what was lost. We think we know grief. We wrap it in rituals, in words, in time. But what if grief doesn't belong only to us? What if it echoes deeper into the bones, into the dust, into the memory of creatures who've never spoken a single word? This is not just a story about elephants. It's a story about memory. The kind we carry in silence. The kind we don't choose. The kind that survives, even when everything else doesn't. The elephant is the largest land animal alive today. But size is not what defines her. It's what she carries, not on her back, but in her mind. Her brain is massive for times the size of ours, and in that gray labyrinth, she stores more than sights and sounds. She stores moments. She stores faces. She stores pain. Elephants have been seen returning to the place where a loved one died. They stand in silence. They caress bones with their trunks. They stay for hours, sometimes days, doing nothing, except remembering. No food, no shelter, just memory. Why? There is no biological advantage to grief. It doesn't feed the herd. It doesn't protect the calves. It doesn't ensure survival. And yet they mourn. Scientists have documented elephants crying, calling out for the dead, even carrying the bones of their fallen kin across long distances, as if trying to bring them home. What do they feel? We don't know, but maybe we do. Because in their rituals, we see ourselves. We bury, we return to graveyards. We speak names into empty rooms. We cry in places where no one can hear us. Why? Because something in us refuses to let go of what mattered. Not because we're weak, but because we remember. And so do they. The elephant's memory is not a trick. It's not about party tricks or performance. It's about survival. About history. About knowing where the water was 10 years ago during the drought. About avoiding the valley where poachers struck a decade before. But it's also about family. Knowing who raised you, who protected you, who walked beside you when you were too small to reach the leaves. And when one of them disappears, they notice. They pause. They wait. They look back, and for a while, they search. Memory in elephants is not passive. It's alive. It guides their movement, shapes their behavior, binds their herd. They don't just remember danger. They remember love. There is a word we use: matriarch, a female who leads, who carries the map in her mind, not just of the land, but of her family's soul. She knows where her sister gave birth, where her mother died, where her calf was attacked. She remembers everything, because no one else can. And when she dies, the herd is never quite the same. They hesitate. They lose direction. They pause in places that once made sense but now feel hollow. Her absence is not just emotional. It's structural. She was the memory, and now the memory is gone. So we ask again, what do elephants remember that we forget? Maybe it's this: that grief is not a weakness, that love doesn't end with the body, that memory is not a prison, but a thread connecting us to those who came before, and to those who still walk beside us, even when we can no longer see them. There's a rhythm to how elephants move. It's not just instinct. It's memory alive in motion. Every footstep touches a path that was once walked by another, a mother, a grandmother, a child that didn't make it through the last drought. The earth is a map. But the map is not made of lines or words. It's made of echoes. And elephants know how to listen. Researchers have followed elephant herds for decades. They've watched how matriarchs, sometimes over 60 years old, lead their families through lands they haven't seen in generations. But when the rivers run dry, they still remember where the hidden springs are. When danger comes, they know which valley once sheltered them. This isn't just memory. It's legacy. A transfer of knowledge not through books or speech, but through presence, through experience, through trust. Young elephants learn not by instruction, but by watching, by following, by absorbing the rhythm of the herd. They learn which plants to eat, which calls mean stay close, and which mean run. They learn where their mother hides when the storms come. They learn where their father stood long before they were born. Elephants are born into memory, not as a burden, but as a map of belonging, and that map shapes them. There's a story told by rangers in Kenya. An old elephant returned to the site where she had been shot by poachers decades before. She didn't avoid it. She stood there for hours, silent, unmoving, not afraid, but remembering. The place wasn't just marked in her skin, it was etched into her soul. And yet, we forget. We pave over forests where ancestors once danced. We build towers where bones still sleep. We forget names. We forget faces. Sometimes, we even forget how to remember. Elephants don't. Even in captivity, they remember their freedom. Even after trauma, they remember the hands that hurt them, and the ones that healed. There are stories of elephants recognizing their caretakers. After 20 years apart, rushing forward with tears, with trumpets, with joy. What do they hold inside them? And why do we let it slip away? In the wild, memory keeps them alive. But in the soul, memory keeps them whole. Scientists have studied their hippocampus, the region of the brain responsible for memory. In elephants, it's remarkably well developed, far beyond what's needed for survival alone. Because survival isn't just about finding food, it's about finding each other. Again and again. Their memories are social, not just spatial. They remember old friends, enemies, alliances between herds, the scent of a calf that vanished years ago. They grieve not just for family, but for friends. And when a familiar scent returns on the wind, they pause, they listen, they remember. In our world, grief is often hidden. We're told to move on, to forget, to be strong. But elephants don't move on. They move with dot. They carry the memory, not as weight, but as thread, woven into every step, every trumpet, every silence. When a member of the herd dies, there is ceremony. They gather, they touch the body, they stand together. Sometimes in stillness, sometimes in gentle sound, not chaos, not confusion, but a kind of reverence. It is not human, but it is familiar. Because deep down, we do the same. We visit graves. We speak names aloud, long after the voices are gone. We keep photos in drawers, smiles on the wall, memories in the spaces where no one looks. And in doing so, we stay connected, even when nothing else remains. Elephants teach us that remembering is not a flaw. It's a form of love. But what happens when memory is broken? When poaching takes a matriarch before her knowledge can be passed down? When trauma fractures a line of wisdom that took decades to build? In some herds, young elephants raised without elders become aggressive, lost, dangerously disconnected. They don't know how to behave, because they don't know where they came from. Memory isn't just about the past. It's how we shape the future, and when we erase memory, we erase identity, not just in elephants, but in ourselves. Perhaps this is what we've forgotten, that forgetting has a cost, and remembering might be the first step toward becoming whole again. There's something sacred in how elephants carry their dead, not with words, not with tears, but with presence, with steps that return, with trunks that reach, with hearts that do not close. They don't need language to say, "I remember you." They just keep walking with the memory beside them. Asterisk. To remember is to belong, not just to a moment, but to a lineage, to a rhythm that began long before you were born, and that, somehow, continues after you're gone. In elephants, memory is identity, not a list of facts, not a database, but a feeling of place, of relationship, of story. Remove that memory, and the herd fragments. The young don't know who to follow. The land becomes unfamiliar. Even the self becomes unstable. Because when no one remembers you, when no one remembers your name, your story begins to fade. Not just from the world, but from yourself. Elephants know who they are because they remember who they come from. They carry the memory of matriarchs who led through floods and fire, who stood firm when predators circled, who found water in places where even the birds had given up. Those memories are not luxuries. They are survival. Now look at us. We erase what's inconvenient. We rewrite what's uncomfortable. We forget on purpose. We forget languages. We forget stories. We forget the names of the rivers that once gave us life. We say we're modern, advanced, free from the past. But what have we sacrificed to feel so untethered? There was a time when humans, too, lived like elephants. Stories weren't written, they were spoken, sung, etched in memory, and carried in silence. Elders were not forgotten. They were libraries. We gathered around them, not for instruction, but for orientation. Then came speed, machines, distraction, comfort, and slowly we forgot how to remember, not the facts, but the soul of things. We remember release dates, but not birth stories. We remember passwords, but not prayers. We scroll through content, but forget how to sit in silence with the memory of someone we've lost. The elephant pauses. She touches the same tree her mother once leaned against. She does not rush. She does not explain. She simply stays. And in her staying, a memory survives. Memory, for elephants, is ritual. The returning, the touching, the walking in familiar patterns. They do not ask, is this efficient? They ask, is this true? Maybe that's what we've forgotten. That remembering is not a weakness. That revisiting pain is not the same as getting stuck in it. That memory is not the opposite of progress. It's the foundation of purpose. We design cities with no space for reflection. We fill our days with alerts and urgency. But when do we stop to touch the places where we once belonged? Elephants never forget where they buried their dead. They return, not to dig, but to remember. Their grief is not productive. It does not build, it does not optimize, but it heals. There is something sacred in that kind of return. Not to change anything, but to witness, to honor, to connect. Humans to use, to build altars not just of stone but of silence, of listening, of presence. Now we outsource memory to devices, to clouds, to archives. But the question is, do we still carry anything in the heart? A calf follows her mother through a dry plain. She doesn't know why this path matters, but she knows to walk it, to trust it. Because someone before her trusted it too. That is memory, not as knowledge, but as inheritance. There's a danger in forgetting too much. Without memory, we lose continuity. Without continuity, we lose compassion. If you forget where you come from, you forget what you owe. To the land, to the herd, to the ones who made space for you. Elephants remember because they must. We must remember because we've chosen not to. What would it look like to live like the elephant? To move slowly, not out of laziness, but out of reverence. To pause where pain happened, not to relive it, but to transform it. To carry our memories not like burdens, but like lanterns. What if our forgetfulness is not freedom, but a fracture? What if memory is the only thing that truly connects us to something greater than ourselves? The forest remembers. The soil remembers. The bones remember. And the elephant walks, not to escape the past, but to carry it forward with grace. We forget because we think memory slows us down. But maybe that slowness is where the truth lives. The elephant never rushes through memory. She walks with it, beside it, as if it were a friend. And in that companionship, she becomes more than an animal. She becomes a witness. The question was never, do elephants remember? The question is, how do they carry it? So gracefully. Because memory, for them, is not a weight, it's a compass. A tether to the invisible. A way of saying, I still belong. Even after loss. Even after silence. When a matriarch dies, her story doesn't vanish, it's absorbed. By the calves who watched her. By the sisters who stood beside her. By the wind, which still carries the scent of her path. In our world, we mourn briefly, then rush back to urgency. We bury, then bury again. Not the dead, but the feeling. We've built civilizations on forgetting. It's more efficient, more profitable, less painful. But something in us grows thin, detached. UNROOTED. And we don't know why. Maybe the elephant does. Maybe she knows that to forget too much is to become hollow, directionless. A being that moves but no longer arrives. So she returns to the bones, to the trees, to the silence. Not because she enjoys sorrow, but because there is something sacred about looking back and still walking forward. In the softest part of her, grief becomes guidance. Love becomes legacy. Memory becomes map. And us. What happens when we remember? Not just facts, but feelings, smells, songs. The weight of a hand we haven't held in years. Something opens. A door, maybe. A window to another time. Another version of us. More connected, less frantic, more whole. We were never meant to carry memory alone. We were meant to share it, pass it down. Not as data, but as fire. Something that warms, that guides, that binds. Perhaps elephants don't have rituals, but they have rhythm. And in that rhythm, there is remembrance. They return to the same waterhole their mothers drank from. They teach their young the same paths through dust and thorn. They never call it tradition, but it is. We used to live like that too. Stories told at dusk. Names spoken to the stars. The dead remembered not with tears, but with songs. We didn't fear the past. We walked with it. And then, we forgot how to remember. We called it progress. But maybe it was only speed, and speed, without memory, is just spinning in place. The elephant keeps walking. She does not rush. She does not flinch. Because she knows everything. We are comes from everything we've been, and everything we've been is still alive, if we choose to listen. So what do elephants remember that we forget? They remember that memory is not just a story, it's a mirror, a bridge, a responsibility. They remember that pain doesn't end a connection, it deepens it. They remember that death is not disappearance, it's transformation. And most of all, they remember how to carry grief without letting it close their hearts. We are the species that writes books, paints murals, builds archives. But are we the species that remembers, really remembers? Because to remember is to honor, and to honor is to belong. What elephants teach us is simple, but not easy. That slowness is sacred. That grief is not a failure. That memory is the shape of love over time. Fade to black. Silêncio. Depois, o som suave de uma tromba ao vento. So maybe the question isn't, what do elephants remember? Maybe the question is, what are we still willing to carry? Even when the world tells us to let go. Because somewhere deep inside, beneath our distractions, beneath our algorithms, beneath the noise, we still remember too. We just need to listen.